So, welcome everyone. This is session four in the Becoming Regenerative series. And this particular session is about the notion of potential. So, a couple things just to set us up before Helen kicks us off. Um, we strive, so this is a series that we're offering on foundational aspects of what we call regenerative practice. And so potential is one of those, and working within these realms of potential. So we'd encourage you to operate as a group here in a developmental way. We're here to help each other co-learn and uh, work together to try and have a productive dialogue around these subjects. So the more that we can make this developmental for all of us, the better. It's one of the things we're striving for. And a big part of that is you are expected to actively participate. I understand some people might need to have their cameras off, and if you do for whatever reason, that's fine. Um, the story that I often tell is my partner was working with Carol Sanford and attended his first session with her. And the question was, well, why are you here? What are you hoping to get out of this? And John's response was, I'm here to be a sponge, right? Just to listen and learn. And Carol's response was, that is not in my cosmology. So the idea here is we're expected to actively participate in a developmental group. So there is an expectation for that. So again, welcome. And I'm going to turn it over to Helen to kick us off with our opening exercise.
Okay, hi everybody, and special hi to Gavin who just joined us. We have quite a Michigan Lake Michigan contingent here, which is kind of cool. Um, so the question today, what we're talking about today, is potential versus problem solving, and understanding that relationship between what's potential and what's problem solving. And I'm not going to actually explain to you what we mean by that yet. I'm going to look to you to kind of be talking about that amongst yourselves. So, Marcus, do you want to share the slides, please?
Can do that. Yeah.
So, what we're going to put you in a breakout, and there'll be three of you in the breakout. You'll have about maybe 10 minutes together. And what I want you to do is think of an example where you want or wanted to solve a good sized problem from your work or life. So this should be a problem that is a group problem, not an individual problem. And it could be something related to your family or a project at work or another group you're involved with. But make sure it's something in a group and something that feels personal to you. So one of the things I recommend is when you get into the group, you might spend, maybe a few minutes individually just thinking of what you want to talk about, and then um, have a conversation related to the following questions. Think of how you would be or how you are addressing this issue in terms of solving that problem. And what is the process you're engaging? And so have a conversation with the people in your group about that. And now then think about how you could be or are addressing this issue in terms of its potential and what's the process you could be engaging. So we're looking at you to have a conversation related to both of these issues, problem solving or potential. So shall we go into the groups? Are you ready, Marcus, with that?
I am ready. How long do you want folks to have,
Um,
Helen?
should we say 10 minutes?
10 marks. Everybody ready? The what was in the slides is also in the chat.
Yep. Marcus, are you intending to for us, you and me, to join rooms too?
I did not.
Hi, Eileen. Let's see.
There we go. Everybody went.
Yeah, so I
Looks
didn't
like
join, which is fine.
it's up to you. You are
Um,
in room 5 if you wanted
yeah,
to
no, I'm okay.
go join them. Whoop. Welcome back, everyone.
Oh,
Gonna Helen's gonna offer some reflection questions out of this exercise.
Okay. Welcome back.
thank you.
So, um, we'll have a few questions for to reflect on, and so let's see how this goes. You may want to use your hand signal to say you want to talk, but or you can just talk. Um, so what difference did you notice between the two, problem solving versus potential? Rick.
Yeah, I was teaming with Joel. I mean, we both were talking about sort of big projects that we're involved with, and whatever that means. And what I see in this conversation is that the difference maybe between the problem-solving path or the path of what is the potential of a project is that in a very complex project, a path will get you there eventually. If you solve all the problems, you'll eventually get to a solution. But if you can stand in the solution already being in place as a vision and then work back, you have,
Mm.
I find it very comforting for me to be in that spot, and also find it very inspiring. And it enables me to be with all the complexity kind of under it. And so, yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
saw.
so it's really fundamentally a different way of looking because in one you're well, let's see what others have to say, but I think
Yeah,
that's great. Thanks.
thank you.
Anybody else have an experience of the difference between coming at something from problem solving versus potential?
Well, I'll just add on since I was with Rick, from a feeling standpoint, it feels like working from a problem space feels very constrained um,
Mm.
and kind of tight, and potential feels more expansive and yeah, free. And I don't know if that's just cognitive bias because I think both Rick and I were saying that we both our home base is we live on the potential side anyway. You know, when your job is dreaming up things that don't exist, you tend to spend more time there anyway. And so the challenge is getting other people to come along for the ride. But I just wanted to note that the different nature of how it feels to work in those each of those places.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. And I'm curious how many people felt the way that Joel was describing, and then how many people felt the opposite of that. How many people felt the way Joel that potential was expansive and problem solving was constricting? How many people felt that way?
So, okay, yeah.
And how about the opposite of that?
Yay, Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of us are conditioned and trained, right, to solve problems, and we're more comfortable there than working in an area that's open-ended, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
just paying
Rick,
attention to that feeling.
Rick, did you want to add
Yeah,
something?
I just said that I certainly am primarily in the space as Joel was describing, also of standing in like the possibility or the potential. But I find that I can be with the problem-solving world much more effectively, from that point of view. So in the end, it's kind of both for
Mm.
me in the end. But it reminds whenever I get discouraged or get confronted, I can move over to this place of possibility and say, well, this is what could happen here, and now we can move. So it's for me, it's a kind of a reset strategy or a place to
Mm.
be as well.
Nice.
Thank you. Max.
Yeah, hey, it's nice being on Zoom because Marcus can't kick me under the desk for saying what he knows I'm going to bring up. I think this reinforced for me that I think especially as folks join this school of thinking that we are given or maybe sometimes turn things that are suggested into what I call training wheels. So I'm just noticing how the term problem solving is maybe not the same as problem obsession or problem over focus or problem honoring. Like maybe those are all different things. And there's situations where problem honoring is super important and not doing it destroys potential, or makes it very unavailable to you. On the other hand, I think our school is more focused on folks being stuck there and trying to pull them out of it. And there's just an external considering for like culture and context and positionality that's super important before you just kind of go slamming in trying to pull people out of problems. So the kind of question
Yeah,
I think is how do you transcend and include them differently based on each situation?
I'm wondering whether the mindset you're coming from is what actually has an impact on how you're thinking about the problem solving and potential. Lisa?
Hi, yeah. So what surfaced in our group was that a lot of times when you're trying to work with people and you're just dealing in the world of, facts and statistics and, what to do and how to do it and where and when and, those kinds of questions. Um, it it's not enough to inspire people. I was listening to something yesterday about storytelling and realized that, storytelling to potential, telling a story of, what could be, um, is a way to get people to see the potential that facts and figures and this is and that's can't really convey with the same kind of like emotional or visceral uh, response.
Mm.
Yeah. So you're actually, in a sense, answering one of the other questions that I was going to look at, which was like, what's the value of addressing potential before solving a problem? Vicky?
Hi. I was with Rebecca, and as is often the way, towards the end, you kind of click into something and then could carry on talking about that thing. It comes up last quickly. Um, and we're actually got the same challenge. And Rebecca wisely reflected it's about a different perspective to, to how we maybe should than we are looking at it. And it just made me think, we're working on a new issue that is an innovative thing. It's a nascent thing, and yet the process we're using to try and address it is how we've addressed things in the past. And it's a sort of semi-linear process of you do this and try that, and if that doesn't work, try this, and if that doesn't work, try this. And maybe we're using the wrong tools to try and get the answer
Mm.
because the problem hasn't existed before.
Mm. So another question is, um, sort of, well, I'd like to ask that the question again. What's the value of addressing potential before solving a problem? And how does potential actually create added value? Cameron.
I think when I sit with that question, what comes online for me is that my will, my want to engage energetically, like goes through the roof if I'm focusing on potential. Like, what would it be like if we brought these people together and like worked toward, this really cool thing? And in contrast, I'm coming from a background of like mechanical engineering and trying to fix the problems and solve the problems in the equation. Like if I track my energy, candidly, it goes down when I'm focused on that kind of. It's a bit of a yeah, energetic spiral and not enlivening. So for me, focusing on potential first gets me into a whole different state of mind.
That's great. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Yeah. Kat?
Yeah, I think, and I wonder as well whether there's cultural differences within this as well in terms of how we perceive problem solving. Um, I certainly see a lot of people saying, people are looking for problem solvers. If you are putting your CV somewhere as currency to being a problem solver, because there's something in you're going to be efficient because you're going to get rid of the problems, which is sort of this roundabout way of sort of almost constantly deleting things and moving them out of the way rather than if you start from potential and that value that has there, you're not necessarily getting rid of things. It feels much more like you're building from something rather than constantly editing out. It's not to say that you wouldn't edit, but you're not starting from editing copy that's not yet written. Or you've assumed in your head, which is the problem. You're sort of writing the potential first that then gets edited. So it feels much more expansive. But I think I wonder whether we, in our minds and our cultures, maybe problem solving has a positive value that leads us to believe potential doesn't feel focused, it doesn't feel efficient, it feels as if it's too unwieldy. Whereas when I think of potential now, I do get much more excited by that in terms of I don't want to solve problems because that's not moving and it feels almost like it doesn't move stuff forward. So potential for has a different motion to it.
You're just bringing up something for me, which I'm just kind of laughing at because, um, when I went to architecture school and for years after architecture school, it was always like, architecture school is all about problem solving. And, that's a good thing. We're problem solvers. And, oh, now I'm realizing that maybe being problem solvers is not really what I don't know.
It's
Is that,
it's not that you don't solve problems, right?
yeah,
To Max's point about, right, it's both and, right? It's
yeah,
transcend and include.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
We do need to work on solving problems.
Right. So I don't know, Mcallone. What is your name? Wait,
That's Matt.
To have my name
Matt.
showing? I'm so sorry. I meant to Matt. Uh,
Matt. And did he just disappear?
No, he just moved.
can, can
Okay.
you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Matt, your turn.
I'm new to the group, but I just learned in my short session about this law of three, and it's kind of central to this. And I was thinking when you asked this question about potential, I thought about I'm a landscape architect, and I came from that problem solving. But I also came from creative to create. What are you creating? And I don't know if are you creating a new problem to solve per se? I mean, yes, I guess if you're creating something, there's that restraining force to say like why you can't do it. And I think that's kind of what I run into with my kind of like the research and the kind of work that I would like to do, but I feel constrained by the potential problems that exist. Um, I haven't quite figured out what that reconciling force is.
Okay.
But to
So
answer your
Matt,
question,
we're going to give you a chance to work on that in the next breakout.
Yep.
okay.
Great.
And
If there weren't
so
three other hands up, that would be the perfect segue. But
Great.
exactly. So
let's
I
Thank
try
you.
and
want
get through
to
the other three hands and then let's move on.
and then yeah, exactly. So Alexis, you're on mute.
Can you all hear me now?
Yep.
My response to working with potential first is that I think about children and the mind of a child where their imaginations just they go everywhere. And it's easy for them to be free because they haven't been, the world hasn't constrained them yet, and they haven't been taught those constraints. And I think that starting with potential um, could lead to solving problems just naturally because that potential answered problems that we're already dealing with. So that's I'll try to be brief, but that was kind of my thought with potential.
No, that's great. I
All
think
right.
it's like the
Thank you.
perfect example, right? So imagine a child. Um, are they a problem to solve, or are they just full of potential? Right.
Yeah.
And so almost viewing the work that we do and the way that we're applying these things as if it were, right, the development of a child. Well, and literally we're all still, no matter how old we are, there's still that child in all of us, right, that is developing. So
Pretty close to the
Right.
surface sometimes.
yeah, definitely.
Speaking for yourself, Max, huh?
Go ahead, Miguel.
Miguel.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about I mean, how fun it is for me at least, to solve problems, but sometimes we're attacking symptoms, and those attacks create direct pushbacks. And by solving from potential, you are forced to take a step back and then look at the system where that problem exists versus the punctual uh, issue that you're looking at. So by working from potential, then you may be able to work indirectly, and then you don't have the unintended consequences of pushing onto whatever the problem is, and that has uh, energetic implications.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Miguel.
Joya.
Yes, hi. So I was, so my challenge is that I'm doing a literature review, for example. I'm just talking about an example. I'm doing a literature review and I want to just not do the review and go to the next thing, but I want to actually expand that review into something more. So, but by doing that, I'm looking at the potential. So I'm looking at what else I can come out with from that literature review. But then, but then, am I complicating the issue? Am I complicating my assignment?
Sounds like good questions to hold.
Okay, thank you also for everybody who put some comments in the chat, but I think we're going to move on. Thank you so much for your reflections. And now you get a chance to have a further conversation about potential.
So we already had an introduction to the law of three, so I don't need to introduce it in detail. Many of you I know are familiar with this. Gurdjieff, which is one of the lineages in this school, comes from Gurdjieff, said something to the effect that the law of three is basically the fundamental law of the way the universe evolves, the way life evolves. And so it's a key framework that we use in this practice. And essentially, the idea is that there is some sort of activating force or activating energy. Quite often, we refer to these things as energies pretty often. And so somebody wants to do something, right? Somebody, right, has an idea. Somebody, right, gets excited. Right, there's this will behind wanting to activate and manifest something, right? And quite often in that process, you run into restraints. Things get in your way. Things are ostensibly seen as obstacles. And quite often in our culture, right, the intersection between those two things is viewed as conflict. And quite often, restraints are viewed as things to be overcome or gone around or trampled or, right, obliterated, gotten out of the way. And in our world, quite often, that conflict often devolves into compromise, right? So everybody loses something. Um, and yeah, we kind of maybe start to think about solving a problem, but that's the level that it's operating at is this problem solving level. Um, One of the things that we encourage folks to do is view restraining forces as our friends. Those of you that are designers, architects, and so forth, if you had no restraints on a project, you probably wouldn't be able to design anything because there's nothing pushing back and restraining and giving you guidance on what it is you're designing. So the law of three says that what we're trying to do is we're trying to invite reconciling energy into this intersection between activating and restraining forces. It's often referred to as reconciling energy or harmonizing energy. It comes from the realm of potential, is the connection here with potential and problem solving. So the law of three is this foundational framework that we apply to a lot of these things, and we're going to put you in a breakout to play with this in the context of the situation that you originally envisioned. But I wanted to, there's a number of you that are familiar with this framework, and I just wanted to invite some reflections on what's the value, what have you found to be the value of utilizing the law of three in your work? So those of you that are more experienced with this, what's the value you see in applying this notion? Go ahead, Max.
I think we're so often presented with false choices in our society and societies that we don't even realize are false choices. And are taught to prioritize and rank concerns or intentions. And so I just find scanning for mutual exclusivity premises and they're usually not explicit, where it's just like, well, are we going to do this or that? That's a mutual exclusivity sentence. And just being able to like even not out loud being able to like say, well, what if we reject the premise that these two or three or four or five things are in any way mutually exclusive? What then do we see? And I just find there's usually answers.
Yeah.
You almost always see something else.
Yeah, the other thing our chief said is we tend to be in our culture tend to be third force blind, right? We don't see those things that you're describing. Go ahead, Elena.
Yeah, I think one thing that's been coming up for me has been how holding this very actively in situations where this starts to occur, you have everything present all at once, is it becomes quite non-judgmental. You kind of have
Mm.
you're not afraid of holding the process because you know it's a good thing that there is restraining. There's a good thing. There's activating, and it's a good thing that someone jumps in with the reconciling energy, and you start to also get to sense the unifying field, and then people get to contrast themselves into realizing, oh, here's the restraining, here's the activating, so you can start to work with them as energies and making people aware of what goes on. And I feel like then it actually becomes a very inclusive gathering, because everyone has a role, has a voice. It's non-judgmental. I really like that about this framework.
Thanks. Go ahead, Lisa.
So sometimes these forces, activating and restraining forces, are natural forces, and that if you approach them as if it's necessary to reconcile them in a single way, you get into problem solving, and that it's another perspective on this is that activating and restraining forces work in conjunction, like your sympathetic nervous system speeds your heart up and your parasympathetic nervous system slows it down. And it's in the responding, they do that in order to respond to, like what's going on, whether you need to run away from a predator or whether you need to rest, or whether, like, and so finding ways to manage the activating and restraining forces in ways that balance them according to the needs of the context, I think can also be another way of reconciling with, but you have to stay within these tensions because they're natural tensions.
Yeah, not something to be avoided.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Josh, real quick. I think Josh is going to be last. We're going to put you in breakout so you can play with this.
Right. I mean, one thing I like about this framework is that, like all great frameworks, you can start from any point. And sometimes you find yourself in life being the restraining force, or sometimes you find the role that you're called upon is to be the reconciling force, which forces you to find who the stakeholders are. Sometimes we don't call the restraining force a restraining force. We just call it another activating force. So it has no negative connotations. But once you find your role in discovering the potential, then using this as a great tool to find where the other two forces are coming from.
Yeah, great point, Josh. It's not like a linear process, right? It is kind of a living systems-based framework. So important distinction. Thanks. So I'm putting the exercise in the chat. I'll share it real quick, but basically it's take the example that you were playing with before, the notion you were playing with in the original exercise, and run through a series of questions around the activating, restraining, and reconciling. There's a lot of questions there under reconciling, so don't feel like you have to like answer them all. We just want to, and so treat it all lightly and try to get through all three relative to your situation. And any questions?
So how much time are we giving them?
I think the 10 minutes again, okay. Helen, is probably good. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to open the rooms.
See you back here. All right. Welcome back, everyone. So just wanted to invite a few reflections on how did the application of that framework affect your thinking? And how might this affect the way that you address problems in the future? So how did this affect your what was the impact on this on your thinking? And how might it shift the way you address problems in the future? Go ahead, Carrie.
Kari. I forgot that it's Karen,
it's you.
It's me. Yeah, but my phone doesn't say the same thing.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Well, what's really interesting is I've been trying to figure out how to talk about my work. And what really hit me lately with all the insanity going on around us is nobody's talking about imminent collapse of ecological and social systems. And I was like, what if, and then playing with it, what if it's a reconciling force? What if it's activating force? What if it's a restraining force? And that actually feels very exciting as opposed to terrifying. So that's a new thing. I'm going to be working with that.
So you're feeling like an energetic shift potentially.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem, what I put in there is like I feel like the whole thing of problems is like rooted in binary thinking. Either you can have your sovereignty or I can have my sovereignty, but we can't both have sovereignty and find a way together. It's such a um, strictly my opinion, like it's such a harm that was done by colonization and splitting that idea that there can be reconciling forces. So to move away from like the collapse as a bad thing, right, and just as another cycle that we have to go through as humanity feels really different. Feels healing, honoring.
Nice. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Karen. That's
Other thoughts? What came up for you in that? Did you notice any shift in how you were thinking about your situation?
For me, it feels less. More like me versus them, right? Them being the restraining force, like the only look at the lead scorecard. Is that going to get you more points in the lead scorecard versus expansive thinking? What I really want to bring to the table, which is the like, let's think bigger. How can we weave sustainability strategies throughout this whole building? And so if we think about it in terms of energy, it almost becomes like less personal, if you will. And that was helpful to make that shift.
Nice. Anything else folks noticed?
Yeah, I noticed something for me, and I had the pleasure of being in Carrie's breakout group.
Rick, your audio is a little faint, or at least to my ears.
Pardon?
Your audio is low. It's faint.
Let me see what I can do about that here. Does that help?
That's much better.
Yeah, I had a microphone on my headset turned on by accident over in the corner there. Yeah, so quickly, I'm just saying that I had pleasure being in Carrie's breakout session as well. We had a great conversation there. One thing that I noticed that for myself is, because I talked a little bit about just all the clearing I need to do when I'm doing facilitating work, right? And I have a number of sort of practices that I go through for myself. But one of them is to in that kind of work where you're working with groups of people and developing visions, is to practice a degree of non-attachment yourself. This is, so if you want to say that, I always tell people, let's go for the highest common denominator, not the lowest being compromised, the highest being what's possible. And you may never get, you may not get there, but if you have that as your kind of North Star, you have a possibility of getting there, right? And part of it for me is to try to detach myself from how I think it ought to end up. And if I can do that, then I find like we'll get somewhere with a project, and it won't be what I had in mind initially in my own mind. But at that point, I'm fully bought into it myself as well. And that's kind of like it always surprises me when that happens. But it seems to be
you kind of care more about what it is that the group can develop together than you care about getting your own way.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So there's a clear caring element in that, I think. Great. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, what came up for me in telling my story was that if I shift from activating to being in the reconciling, it forces me to look at not what's restraining, but what is activating everybody else. If I can find a reconciliation that meets the activating forces of everybody else, with still having my skin in the game and having
Right.
what I'm trying to do as well, it's a much more positive approach and more likely to reconcile than figuring how you can reconcile by throwing people bones or you know things of that sort. So it was a nice positive way of looking at things.
So it gets you, what I'm hearing and what you're saying is it gets you into external considering mode. Is that
Yeah, in
fair?
a positive way though, as
Yeah,
to
yeah,
what is
yeah.
activating them rather than considering
Right.
all the people who might be, feeling hurt by what you're proposing.
Yeah. Really connecting it into what others are caring about,
Mhm.
as Rick was saying too, I think. Great. Go ahead, Bridget.
Hi. Yeah, with my discussion and my problem that I'm trying to solve, it's a big problem, and again, it's something that doesn't really like the kind of work I'm trying to do doesn't really exist yet, particularly. So instead of like taking all of that on, starting to carve out spaces and work that does exist, and just carving out a little pocket to do this new kind of work in work
Mm.
that already exists, was something that came up in terms of reconciling energy.
Mm.
So that was just another way to look at it.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I made reference to Gurdjieff. If you're not familiar with it, you can look him up. But um, the yeah, the whole notion of a fourth way school that he developed was right is practicing this work in your life, right? Not going off and right separating yourself, right? It's we got to do this work integral to our life and our work, right? So we're working on the work as we're working, right? Um, so yeah, thanks for bringing that in. Any other thoughts to share? Well, we're going to try and squeeze one more exercise in, which should be relatively quick, and Helen's going to walk us through that.
Yeah. So what we want you to do is spend about, we'll give you about 8 minutes for this for a journaling exercise. So hopefully you have something to write on. And as part of this, where Marcus and I came up with several premises for this kind of work of looking at problems versus potential. And I guess I'll read the premises. One, problems cannot be effectively solved in isolation without exploring the potential embedded within them. The exploration of potential requires systemic, holistic thinking. And by probing potential first, teams can align around the aim behind what they're working on. So we invite you to take a look at these premises and apply them to the first exercises that you were just working on and to journal your responses. And then take a look at these questions. What new potential are you seeing in your situation? What's the value of seeing it? And if you're not seeing new potential yet, what premise would help you to see new potential in your situation? So we'll give you about 8 minutes, 7 or 8 minutes to write, and then ask you all to come back and we'll ask for some reflections and then we'll close.
So the
So our
prompts are in the
commitment,
chat if you didn't screen capture that or
yeah. So go for it. Start writing. Start thinking. Why don't we all come back? And let's have some reflections on what where you are now with regard to like what did you discover regarding your issue or situation as you work through this exercise? What did you discover as you worked through this? Yeah, Matt.
Hi. So I've been really discouraged to move forward in this in some research I'm interested in, and it's because I think I felt restrained by um like, collapse is imminent and no one's here to help you, and the systems that were in place to help you are not necessarily guaranteed to be there, to be in place. So I'm like, okay, then I'm just like, I have to just go it alone and figure it out. Um, but what I'm reflecting on a bit is don't assume that one, failure is imminent, whatever that means, whatever failure means. And also don't assume that even if it is imminent, it doesn't mean that you can't readapt what you're already doing to the new situation you're in. So, so kind of in summary, like don't feel stuck because you feel overwhelmed by what's going on. Go ahead and proceed in the way you want to proceed, in the ways that you are seeing things be successful. And as our situation evolves, you will find a way to maintain that potential in whatever new system actualizes, should a new system actualize. If that makes some coherent sense.
That's really exciting, Matt. So it sounds like actually doing this exercise has had you see something new for yourself, a new potential for yourself in terms of some place where you were stuck.
Yes.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? What did you discover regarding your issue or situation as you worked through this exercise? And I could, yeah, Cameron.
The problem that I've been holding in mind is I'm on the board of a nonprofit that does good work in our kind of region. And we need to hire a new executive director. The executive director left last fall, and I've been advocating for the board to focus on potential to develop a process to hire a new executive director. I've been seeing it as a problem that they won't, right? So I'm in problem mindset about this board not focusing on potential. And what illuminated for me through this process was, and it's probably a reflection for learning for next time as opposed to something that I can do now, but I could have done a lot better job of engaging them in developing a sense of potential about the situation as opposed to advocating for you should care about this and this is how we should do it. So it was revealing for me in a way that I didn't expect. Appreciate that.
That's great. Nice. Rick?
Yeah, I think what I learned in this was to practice what I preach. This one, one of the big problems now, intentionally use that word for this conversation. The problem is that with the project is that about half the site might evaporate because of a real estate transaction. It has nothing to do with our project whatsoever, but it's just in the space. And so it has had me worried about, well, what can we do if we have, maybe, half or 2/3 of the land we thought we would have for this project. I wasn't paying attention to how I was feeling about that in the background. And it kind of revealed to me in this conversation, oh, I'm really worried about that, aren't I? So now I need to apply these principles, directly. And then I immediately saw a possibility about the design and planning of the project that actually would benefit from having a somewhat smaller site. And I won't go into details about that, but I just got that. And it's something to explore now again as a new possibility, which it has just been like the curtains just got pulled back on me. Kind of like, whoops. So thank you for this conversation.
Sure.
Thanks for
Sure.
sharing.
Joya.
Yes, I was looking at literature review and having a more holistic literature review. And when I was talking to Kelly, I was saying, oh, the stakeholders, the relevant stakeholders must come together and do it in a joint way. But I think that if the review includes, I'm what I'm saying is that if the literature review cannot be done by the group, but maybe the review itself can encompass other collaborative work, other things that can be included in it rather than having to see people in person. It can include other work that has been done in the sector.
Okay.
See a new potential.
Thank you. Yeah. Max?
Yeah, so I'll confess again that I came with a little bit of an agenda about the topic, but did the exercise and did see new potential. I want to just read a little bit of the journaling. It's fast. The situation I'm holding is our collaboration with a group called Move, and for those that are somewhat in tune with the civil rights movement, they're the group that the Philly police bombed in 1985 and let 61 houses burn down, all kinds of awful shit
That's when I
involved.
was living in Philadelphia, Max.
Yeah.
About 3 blocks away.
Wow. So you probably felt, I met someone that felt the earth shake when they dropped the
Yeah, I
bomb.
didn't because I was happened to be out of town, but it was
Yeah.
shocking.
Oh, okay. Um, so the premises that you guys offered are made more whole, I think, by defining what first means. Um, and whether that's in our minds and bodies or in the room that you're in a situation. And what about other systemic thinking, including timing and positionality? So by thinking about move this way, there's been this scarcity. We've leaned into a potential about building a move interpretive center in West Philly, and now we're hitting another receiving field or restraining force thing where Mike Africa, the leader, is really stressed because he's paying the mortgage on the move house and has to work a ton, and just doesn't have a lot of bandwidth. But so thinking about the scarcity of bandwidth with Mike Africa has because he's all actually because he's holding so much potential already and so many super real problems that not everybody can relate to. Um, I can maybe offer a scale jump and thus capacity growth for him if our trust enables that, which I think it would. But that trust got built because we cared about the problems first and build a relationship where we could then talk about the potential of move and Philly and all kinds of nested things. And so the confession of agenda again is that we can put problems and potential as activating and restraining forces and thus a false choice. And I think it's important to ask, like, how do you actually transcend and include the problems, not transcend and ignore them?
Yeah. So, and one of the questions we would ask is, like, what's the cost of going straight to problem solving? That's maybe a good question, but what's the cost also of going straight to potential?
Right.
Like you
Depending
really
on where
want
you
to,
are. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So, how, and then I guess the next, what you're pointing to is a bigger picture, more holistic thinking. Like once you actually look at this as a much bigger conversation, it changes the whole dynamic of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to end with that. And
Well,
I want to thank you. And Marcus, you have
well,
some
it's
comments.
we'll kind of pick up from there, I guess. I just like to invite any reflections anyone has on this session as a whole. Anything jump out at you? Doesn't have to be from one of the particular exercises or not. So one of the things you'll notice in these sessions is we try and end by inviting people to reflect on basically what is shifting in your thinking between when you came into this space and now that we're about to leave this space. So those reflections are for you more than they are for us. It's a great way to kind of reinforce what understandings may have happened. So go ahead, Debbie.
Yeah, thanks. I can't find the hands up button on my phone, so doing it myself.
Manual, old school,
Yeah, old school. Yeah, putting my hand up. Just the fourth way, Kachif, like you said, that to practice this work in our daily life all the time, it was a really good reminder just to always be holding potential in everything. And in my specific problem, it shifted my thinking. I realized I was focusing solely on function and not being in will as well. So it brought up that framework.
Nice.
Just thinking of potential shifted me away from function. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Any other reflections want to come up?
For me, what came up is it's never really just this or that, it's this and that. And so that this way of thinking is a lot more expansive and doesn't have as many limitations. So, yeah, that's what I took from today.
That's great. Thanks.
This and that.
Anyone else? So if you're holding a reflection and don't want to speak it, I'd encourage you to enter your reflections in the Regenerative Nexus Circle community. You can make comments on this session, and we could continue the dialogue there. If anything's coming up for you, I'd encourage you to participate in that. I will be posting an article that my colleagues and I at Seven Group wrote on this notion of potential. I'll post that along with a link to the session slides. So if you didn't have a chance to copy any of that, or you'll have that. And the invitation, I think, is just to pay attention to when these things show up. That's the practice invitation. Notice when you're in problem solving mode and where potential might and actually create more potential in the situation, right? And vice versa, to Max's point, right? Just notice what's going on in those situations and trying to think more broadly. One of the things I've noticed is when I first learned about the law of three, I started seeing the law of three pop up everywhere. And so pay attention to that in other schools, right? In other teachings and other things outside of this little narrow regenerative practice world that we have. Just, yeah, start looking for it. You'll see it everywhere. So the next session is March 11th, same time. And we're going to be talking about regenerative policies through the lens of nested systems. And Joya, who's with us today, is going to be joining me in that session next month. So thank you so much for participating today, and we look forward to seeing you on future sessions.
And I want to thank you as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
And if you enjoyed this session, bring a friend next time.
Right.
I tried from last time. I don't know if anybody showed up or not. We'll see. I'll do it again.
Keep trying. Keep trying.
The only try, right?
Thanks again.
Thanks both. This was wonderful.
Take care.
Thanks, Debbie.